What's up, Patreon family? This is Megan from the HoodAstroQ, and today I will be talking about Uranus in Taurus. Now, Uranus transitioned into Taurus back on May 15th, 2018, and will remain there until April 26th, 2026. So, relatively speaking, we're still in the very early stages of this transit, and we have a long way to go. But even then, the impacts and the manifestations of Uranus and Taurus has been increasingly evident. It has definitely shaped and impacted our society in so many ways. So I wanted to talk about some of those ways in which Uranus and Taurus has surfaced or revealed itself, and just to kind of give you a general understanding as to what to expect moving forward so we can all be better prepared, okay? Because if you haven't already, put your seatbelt on and just brace yourself for the ride, all right? Now, when Uranus is in Taurus, this creates a lot of uncertainty, specifically in those traditionally Taurus areas. So we're talking a lot of upset when it comes to financial situations. There's often going to be a lack of safety and security, which could lead to a lot of chaos. And even when we're considering 2020, just in and of itself, right, with the COVID situation, it was almost like a domino effect. Of course, it had its ramifications from a health standpoint, but economically, I mean, the world went crazy, specifically America. People work their entire lives thinking that they have something to fall back on, and come to find out, a lot of people don't. Okay, a lot of people don't. There were a lot of layoffs. I believe at this point, right, we're talking millions and millions and millions of people who have filed for unemployment. I mean, an extreme economical upset, you know. In fact, we are in the middle of an economic depression of the likes which no one has seen since the Great Depression. So resources will be scarce, thus creating even more upsets and disturbances in people's personal lives. A lot of people are personally impacted by this, okay? And this has forced a lot of people to depend on the government, right? Once again, tying it back to people having to file for unemployment. But it could also go too far, which could result in people even getting greedy or jammed up due to that greed. And a really good example of this is a lot of people being prosecuted for those small business loans, you know, committing fraud. I believe one person who was recently arrested for that most people know is Baby Blue from Pretty Ricky. Okay, so a lot of people, out of this desperation and this need for, I would even say, survival, and once again, people are scrambling to find a sense of stability and security. Even celebrities, quote unquote, right? Nobody is exempt from this. So in some cases, you do have people getting really greedy with it, taking it a little bit too far, and then producing issues for themselves in that manner. There will be an increased need to implement socialized relief options, essentially a redistribution of wealth. It's going to come. And contrary to what some of the other transits taking place have going on, which could deal with the government really trying to do last ditch attempts to hold on to power, and to keep the wealth and things like that confined to the elite. When Uranus is in Taurus, it will speed up that process of, okay, we need some type of socialized relief for the people. We need some type of option that will take the power and that will take a lot of that support system and give it back to the collective. You know what I mean? So, especially not even to mention once Pluto transitions into Aquarius and then Saturn goes back into Aquarius, it's going to be a complete just 180 in terms of the way our economy works, essentially. This has also created a effect to where every man is for themselves in this era, right? When Uranus is in Taurus, people will have to be very innovative in terms of finding new ways to make money, which has bred a lot of entrepreneurs, okay? A lot of people doing independent work is going to be needed in order for people to be able to sustain themselves. There could also be an increased dependence on making money by way of the internet, which has also manifested by way of working from home. Obviously, due to the pandemic, a lot of jobs, I mean, if people weren't laid off altogether, a lot of different employers had to make modifications in terms of allowing people to work from home. And it even brought forth this conversation in terms of what jobs can be operated from home. So the whole idea of going back to normal, quote unquote, is just over and done with, because this really accelerated and ushered in the artificial intelligence era, where a lot of jobs, if they can find a way for you to do it at home, then they'll make it so where people don't have to come into an office. But also certain jobs will be cut off altogether due to new technology, right? Robots, and once again, artificial intelligence being able to do job roles that normally people could have done, which also increases this level of disparity when it comes to economics and finances and the way that it can have an impact on people's personal lives. There's going to be a lot of people without jobs, okay? Especially if these are people who are very much dependent upon the government for money. So it just ties back into this theme of people always needing to have that level of innovation and creativity, being able to use your noodle to come up with different hustles and different ways that you can support yourself, because the ideals and the traditionalism that we've been fed most of our lives, especially if you are older, right? It's really going to shake you. It's going to knock you off of your rocker. A lot of people feel like they're scrambling. Also, in terms of investments, if you are the type who feels like you have to invest in something, because there are some people who preach about taking advantage of the stock market and so on and so forth, tech investments will be very profitable, as there will be many advancements in computer science and technology. Once again, reinforced with this age of Aquarius, Saturn, and Pluto in Aquarius. I mean, Pluto isn't in Aquarius just yet, but it will be, I want to say, around that same time that Uranus leaves Taurus, but Saturn will transition back into Aquarius later on this year. So technology is literally the future. Get in on it. Also, due to inflation, once again, the gap between the haves and the have-nots will increase. There could even be new forms of currency. And with this Uranus and Taurus comes a way for people to streamline goods and services. You see a lot of people focusing on how to make things more convenient, right? Even when it comes down to things like the way that we pay for stuff being digitalized. So Apple Pay and so on and so forth, right? Especially during the Corona era, where people are just looking for less human interaction one-on-one. How can we just streamline this process? How can we make this a lot easier and touch and go? And it is essentially that depersonalization that comes along with that Uranian energy. Even when it comes down to the flourishing of e-commerce businesses and people running their own online businesses. Now, Uranus and Taurus will also bring about a lot of agricultural hardship as well. There will be a lot of crop failure due to droughts and famine, also wildfire more recently. And even when you take into consideration the most literal or fundamental interpretation of Uranus and Taurus, there could potentially be some mechanical engineering of our weather. Okay. And I thought that was very interesting, because you do have a lot of people who are more so branded to be like conspirators, right? Everything is a conspiracy type of individuals who say that chemtrails exist and that the government is toying with the weather, to which on a personal level, I never really looked that deeply into, nor was I someone who just really knew if I really bought that idea. However, just surely looking at this placement, Uranus and Taurus can produce the idea of using technological advancements to toy and to experiment and tinker with the weather, which of course could also come with harsh consequences that could definitely impact and be detrimental to our food, the way that we make and grow our food, produce food and goods in that manner, okay? I've also read articles about tainted meat, especially during the COVID era taking place, a lot of meat processing plants closing. and the prices of food going up, which is another direct manifestation of Uranus in Taurus. This could also lead to the chemical engineering of food as well. So a lot of people talk about GMOs, and there is this controversy or this kind of debate between whether it's good for you, whether it's not. But just in general, there will be a mistrust for the food production, which could cause more people to show interest in things like being more self-reliant when it comes to growing and producing our own food. So you do see a lot of growth, or I've personally seen a lot of interest in people starting their own gardens. Okay, I know a lot of people. I'm actually a part of a gardening group on Facebook because I want to get into it myself. So just on a mainstream level, things like that could definitely become very much commonplace. Even digitalized food services. Now, things like Uber Eats and DoorDash, right? Postmates, definitely taking off. They could see a surge in business and things like that, tying it back down to convenience, people wanting things at their fingertips, people not really being able to engage with one another. Of course, definitely you could say COVID has exacerbated the need for this type of thing, right? Also, with Uranus and Taurus, conventional ways of life will be on the outs. And there is this sense of like an ushering in of the quote unquote new normal, which can result in new standards being put forth. So a lot of people's values will be put to the test. And the things that seem like good will be bad, and the things that seem like they were bad before will probably be good. There is this out and out rejection of conventional wisdom, I guess you could say, and even of conservative ways and tradition, once again, impacting people more so who are older, right? And also, as a result, people will be pushed into new and more unconventional ways of acquiring money as well. And a lot of the ways in which people can make their money could be something that was previously deemed as immoral. And a really good example of this, you guys, is the OnlyFans craze. So everybody is doing OnlyFans, and obviously I know OnlyFans doesn't necessarily have to be used for sex work, right? People create OnlyFans accounts just like they create Patreon accounts for anything. But the use of doing sex work on OnlyFans has really taken off this year. And obviously the other conditions surrounding Uranus and Taurus in terms of financial insecurity has definitely really just pushed people to their limits and really pushed people to being to the point where it's like, okay, maybe we should consider doing things and switching things up in order to create more security, financial security for ourselves. And although obviously sex workers and porn stars and, people who've made money off of these things have always existed, when Uranus is in Taurus, these things will be normalized. These things will be mainstream. So it's pretty much nothing to hear a person be like, oh yeah, I'm creating an OnlyFans. Y'all go sign up to my OnlyFans. And then of course you'll have some people who will be judgmental or some people who will be like, oh wow. But it's not necessarily shocking per se to most people in society from a collective standpoint. There could also be a push to normalize otherwise shocking or fringe ways of being and behavior and ways of looking at things and even sex. And a lot of our music will reflect this. And another manifestation of this was WAP, the WAP culture. Now, obviously, also we can say women being sexualized and embracing sexuality. I mean, it's not a new thing. Lil' Kim did it. But once again, on a mainstream level, there are many different conversations happening to where even like the whole culture, right? The normalization of whole culture is very much Uranus and Taurus, where people are like, yes, women should be able to do whatever they want to do. And once again, when you have people who are firmly planted in their own values, they may have a difficult time hopping on board with this. However, on the more negative end, in the most darkest sense of Uranus and Taurus and its, plausible outcomes, there could be a lot of perversions, which also make their way to the mainstream. So an example of this is, that fringe part of society that tries to normalize pedophilia and stuff like that. Even from a government level, especially once again, when Saturn transits back into Aquarius and Pluto and Aquarius, I mean, we could be headed for some really dark, twisted, sick times, and a lot of this stuff could be taking place from the top down. Okay, but once again, that's no surprise. That's no surprise. Different video for a different day. But also Uranus in Taurus has brought about a huge surge in astrology. A lot of people are just naturally very interested in astrology, which is good for astrologers like myself, right? And there could be an increased desire to connect to metaphysical concepts and things like that, right? The new age kind of spirituality that you see a lot of people just embracing and becoming more familiar with. However, on the more negative end, it can result in people kind of looking at these things as trends or using these things as a sheer money grab, which I've definitely seen as well. A lot of people who, I mean, I'm not even really going to get deep into the topic, but, you know, a lot of people where I've just, from my vantage point, I'm like, you don't even really know what you're talking about, or, you know, since when have you been interested in this? But a lot of people, it's going to be a need for people to learn how to separate the real from the fake in this type of deal, because with trends comes people hopping on the trends and wanting to ride the wave for the wrong reasons and for sheer monetary gain. So y'all got to be very mindful of that. And then also Uranus and Taurus has also revitalized or revamped this connection or need to connect with nature. Okay, this could be manifested in the way that people eat once again. So I've seen a lot of people even tying it back into the agriculture thing where people are just like, you know what? Let's just cut out meat altogether. You know, a lot of people want to be very holistic in the way that they live their lives. Let's just be vegans. Let's be vegetarians and subscribe to vegetarianism or pescatarianism, that type of thing. But there is also an increased interest in things like hiking, spending time in nature, outdoors. A lot of people buying plants or even coming up with natural remedies and alternatives, right? A really good example of this is I know a lot of people who are going into the herbal blends business where people are actually smoking herbs and crafting different herbs for people to put into their joints, or even creating tea blends and things like that. And shout out to Celestial Clouds, you know, those are my peoples. It's a company that creates blends, herbal blends as well. So, you know, all of that is very much Uranus in Taurus. And in conclusion, the biggest piece of advice that I could give personally in terms of learning how to adapt to this energy is just to be on your pivot and do your best to not overly invest yourself in one form of income. You know, I wanted to say not to really rely on people. And obviously, to a degree, we all need people. We all have to rely on something. But the more rigid that a lot of people are, I noticed during this era, those are the people who suffer the most. People who are, you know, less willing to adapt and even become, you know, hit with the times to a certain degree. Now, do you have to sell your soul? That's a different video for a different day. But, you know, just always make sure that you're staying on your pivot and that you are fortifying yourself from a financial standpoint. And yeah, this sums up my video on Uranus and Taurus. If you have anything that you would like to add, any observations that you have noticed over this time period, feel free to share in the comment section. How has Uranus and Taurus affected you personally? I will be happy to know. Let's have a conversation. So yeah, this concludes my video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And until the next video, I holla.